everyone, my name is Ashley Beeson and welcome back to my channel, and today we are finishing out my reviews for Fashion Month Fall Winter 2025 ready to wear because Paris has concluded, which means it's all done. And as promised, this video will just be a review of some of the collections. So without further ado, let's just get right into the video. The very first collection I want to talk about is Givenchy, and this collection is kind of big just because it is Sarah Burton's debut collection with Givenchy after being with Alexander McQueen for a very long time, I think 97 to 2023. So it's a very big window of time with her being somewhere and then transitioning to a place like Givenchy. So I was very excited to see what her perception and her idea of what Givenchy is and to see what she does with it for this collection. And for this collection, Burton looks back at Givenchy's own debut that happened back in 1952 for its inspiration. And this statement to what she pulled from is essentially shaped in well-defined waists, curved arms, as well as strong but also softer shoulders, kind of bigger shoulders, but they were soft, not a lot of edge to them. And then pants, making them a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more breathable, a little bit more give. The whole collection in itself was pretty simple, but highly effective in the techniques and just how she put it together. And that simplicity does branch into more of an all-around visual with having like a 360 kind of design aspect and some of the interesting visuals that she added. And it's kind of hard to see in some of the photos that you can find, but making looks a little bit more dynamic from both the front and the back, so giving it again that 360. The main one that you can see the most of are the lapels that are on the back of the jackets that are up against the shoulder blades. I think those are very interesting. They were some of my favorite looks, just adding more of that interesting type of visual is something I always like to see. So those were interesting, and there were other like little cutouts and just overall adding some more interest into some of the garments. The dresses were elegant, but there was really a sense of youthfulness, at least to me, throughout them, with laces and tools and knit meshes being either combined together or put into a garment. All of the dresses definitely felt younger and more towards a younger side of Givenchy and fashion, and I think they worked even if they were, you know, maybe longer or a little bit into the body and with some more shape, or they were shorter and poofier. I think they all worked. But the tailoring and pattern making, which was the majority of the collection, were the real stars, using knits, tweeds, leathers, some wools, I would assume, all good fall fabrics, and they all work for tailoring in those silhouettes that Burton chose for this collection, whether it was, again, with those, some of those tailored pieces being maybe skirts or even dresses, or obviously the pants, or moving into the more draped dresses or the mesh dresses. Everything, all of the fabrications that were chosen, regardless of what they were, they all fit. The color palette was fairly simple, mostly neutral with the white, the gray, the black, and then there were hints of tans and pinks, and then there was the yellow that was kind of the main color of the collection. And then with the colors, there were also 3 different floral prints, and then there was also a print that was maybe some sort of animal print interpretation. It was gray and black, but outside of that, everything else was simple, neutral, not much going on. And then there were 2 looks in the collection that felt like they were maybe to break it up, but also to add a bit of a moment. There was a dress that was made out of makeup compacts, like compact makeup containers where on the fabric of this little small mini corseted dress, and then there was a top with regular trousers that was made from like jewels, and it was kind of sitting and kind of draping, I guess. And I thought both of the looks were interesting. To me, they didn't really fit. I liked the idea, but I would have maybe liked to have seen them somewhere else and not in this collection. But I kind of liked the makeup one with the compacts on there. And I did think the jewel one was pretty. It was just maybe not, it didn't make too much sense for this collection. But on the whole, I really love this collection. I love that it focuses on shape and tailoring, which obviously are two things that I very much adore and love. And I thought the color palette was simple but good. Simple always works. And I think the yellow was a good choice to break up all of it, and then having those hints of tans and pinks help too. But I liked that the yellow was bold and it punched through the neutrals. The dramatic shoulders, the larger sleeves, the different dress types, the cinched waists were all good and I loved it. The trousers and skirts were also really well done. I just like the shape. The shape is what I like. And I like that it was a simple collection, but it still had those little dramatic moments with those different tailoring ideas, or putting the lapels on the back, or having the little cutouts, and everything what looked very technical. And simple technical always works, but having simple technical with a little moment is always really good to see. And I think Sarah Burton did a perfect job with a debut that really isn't too shocking considering the resume that Sarah Burton has. And so, you know, not too shocked by her coming into Givenchy and making a collection that is easy, it's wearable, but it's interesting and it works. And I would happily wear the entire collection. And that's it. I think Sarah Burton did a very good job with Givenchy. The next collection I want to talk about is from Ludovic de Sernin, and I'm probably butchering his name, so I apologize. But Ludovic returned to the women's calendar with this collection. He's been focusing on menswear for the most part, and then he just did Jean-Paul Gaultier couture for spring, and so this is the first time he's coming back with his own women's wear collection, and there was menswear sprinkled in. And this collection is titled Interview, but it's in French, and I'm not even going to try and potentially butcher the pronunciation. But the concept is a sense of office dressing, but also having a fantasy and a specific edge that is very much to the sexiness that Ludovic is kind of known for creating. And to achieve that concept, there are suits with leather bustiers, and then eyelet bras that have matching pencil skirts, big fluffy fur coats that also have eyelet corset belts around them. Latex or leather fabrics were used in different silhouettes, with the latex actually being developed for this collection and for Ludovic himself, which it was actually very well fitting, and the entire collection was very sexy and very much kind of risque when it came to the concept of this still being kind of a corporate idea, but it is a fantasy, so it makes sense. And the menswear briefly was just as daring as the women's wear, and I would even maybe argue a little bit more, because it was a little bit more out of the ordinary for what menswear generally is, especially in that corporate interview setting. But it was still good. I'm just not going to talk about it any further than that. For me, I enjoyed the collection specifically since there were technically so few. There were only like 20 women's wear looks around there throughout the collection. It shuffled through between the men's and the women's, and you get the concept very clearly and very quickly, and it just makes sense. The idea of taking something so real and something that is so common and then adding that quick flip of the fantasies and the POV that Ludovic does have, it was interesting, and it wasn't too different to what you could expect within this actual corporate concept. It's just the fabrications and then certain detail works and maybe just even the actual garment styling that makes it not the reality and makes it much more fantastical. And I think too what helped pull all of it together is that the collection itself, the color palette was relatively neutral, which is good, but it also had pops of color with greens, pinks, reds, and blues that helped break up those more neutral colors and kind of pulled in more personality to the concept. And even though it is a bold collection, it is still relatively simple in how it feels. Obviously the eyelet work that is on different parts, whether it be on the sets or the belts, whatever it was used on, obviously that makes things look a little bit more detailed, a little bit more intricate, but on the whole it is a pretty simple collection, just with the added boldness in how it was put together, how it was styled, how it was imagined, and it brings it out of, again, that reality of that corporate setting. But also, regardless of how sexy it is also fairly wearable. I think there might have been like maybe 1 or 2 looks that aren't necessarily wearable as they walk down the runway. You'd have to 100% style it differently to make it wearable, but on the whole, it all is something that people could wear, which again is important, and it works. I liked the fur. I love all of the fur that we've been seeing over the past month. It's something that I've really liked. It's not necessarily new to fall winter, but it is definitely big for this end year, right? With fall and then winter for 2026. The matching sets were good. I love a matching set, and I love the end closing dresses that were longer. They weren't shorter. They were longer, and they had a few different shapes to them, different colors. They just looked different from the rest of the collection, and I really liked it. And realistically, I have nothing to complain about with this one. I thought it was a good way for Ludovic to come back to the women's calendar, and I look forward to seeing what else he creates, because this fall winter collection was a good one. Next, I want to talk about Balmain, and this collection is, according to Olivier Rousteing, a evolution of the Balmain woman, keeping the Balmain woman sexy but pulling it in a different direction. And the collection very clearly has a different feel to it, because we're not seeing the shoulders and, you know, the maximalist energy that we are used to seeing with Balmain and how Olivier designs his collections for Balmain. Instead, we are getting cashmere knitwear looks that took the majority of the collection into a softer and more cocooning-like shape and energy, but in also keeping to the true Balmain Olivier stamp when it comes to the brand. There is still a boldness in these softer looks, and a very clear, bold Olivier styling is the accessorizing, mainly with like the thigh-high boots that were in tons of different fabrics, and they were on almost every look. If they weren't, they were like the heels that had also, again, different fabrics, and they were scrunchier. So there is still like an obvious moment of boldness. But moving into the garments of the collection, the peplum skirts that were throughout were a reference to Pierre Balmain, who is obviously the originator of the brand. There were draped shawl collar hoods, leather jumpsuits that were both in pant and in shorts. There were, I'm assuming, faux fur coats that were very fluffy in color, easy but oversized sweaters in different colors, cargo pockets were all over the place, and then the interesting details that definitely bring in more of that Balmain energy is the molded crocodile embossed detail patterns that were on skirts and dresses, as well as also having this more like geometric variant of crocodile skin that it's like the fabric was folded and shaped into triangles, and that created different line work that kind of simulated scale work of a crocodile. I could be way off on that, but it kind of gave the same energy. There was also, I think, a single cow print look, and then the rest of the bold prints were zebra prints, and the zebra print was either printed like a normal print, or it was created by beadwork, which is really interesting. The detail work that goes into just doing the beading is probably a lot, and it gives more shine. It's just an interesting way of creating a normally printed pattern and put it into beadwork instead. I always appreciate the beadwork. The color palette was both neutral and very bold when it came to the actual colors, but the blacks, the whites, there were some creams, and then there was a gray in there that Olivier has never used, and that was majority at the beginning of the collection. And then for the colors, it definitely felt more heavy on the primary colors, so the red, yellow, blue with orange, yellow, there was a burgundy in there, and then the blues were in sky blues and like a navy blue, and then there was also a more military, a really dark, deeper kind of military green. I'm not really sure what the actual color is. I couldn't like in my brain think about what it was, but the color palette was good, and it mixed in with the neutrals, and I think the color palette is like also another Balmain thing of keeping color, because there was no question that these looks that had color in them. Personally, I really liked this collection. I liked seeing this new chapter that Olivier is kind of moving into with this brand. Brands are always evolving, or they should always be evolving to some degree, but you can still do it in a way that makes sense, and it doesn't take away from the signature of the house and of the active creative director, and I think Olivier did a very good job with that with this one. And I think what Olivier did with this collection was mature his Balmain woman, which I thought was smart, and it can still have those youthful moments, but you just bring it up a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that, and I think it was really well done. I love the color palette, especially the burgundy and blues. I loved the zebra prints, whether it was the printed or of course the beaded part, and the crocodile patterns and the embossed molding were probably my favorite looks. I just thought they were interesting and they're so pretty, and the gold one was the best one, but the red one and the creamy white one, there was black in there too, like they were all good, but the gold one was definitely the main statement piece, and it also had a peplum to it, so it was bringing in the origin, and I thought it all worked. And then the more geometric, as I'm calling it, croc one was also cool, and it had a nice texture breakup from the rest of the knits that were happening, and it was a good contrast to the smooth molding ones that the other ones had. The cargo pockets actually really made sense with a lot of the looks, and I actually liked the jumpers, whether they were the pants or the shorts. It all worked, all wearable, it was all good. I would definitely wear a lot of it, and I just liked how this collection was so heavy on the texture. Fluffy, smooth, pointed, shiny. It was all good, it all worked, it all added a depth to the collection that could have potentially been lost if Olivier went maybe a different route and didn't do what he did. But he just matured and evolved his Balmain woman, but still maintained the fact that this is indeed a Balmain woman, and I just think it all works, and I think Olivier did a very good job with this evolution in his POV, and it's a good fall winter collection. Next, we're going to talk about Elie Saab, and true to his vision of keeping things very glamorous, this collection takes that glamour and just points it at ski resorts, essentially, which is very good and makes sense for fall winter. This collection features a very clear sense of luxury, but it has more of a sporty aesthetic to it, which again goes back and works into that ski resort idea. And because this collection is definitely pointed more towards something like Aspen, the usual stylings of overloaded embellishments and tons of brocades and tons of florals and very light chiffon flowy, it's not fully there. It's still there, but it's not the heavy hitting that we are used to seeing with an Elie Saab collection, but there are still amazing things that are intricate in this collection. The fur coats, tons of fur with this one. Jackets are very voluminous and parkas are sparkly. And then there are the cat suits that are styled with these things that bring in the sportswear energy, and they do look like things that you could see at mountain resorts in the snow, very much so. The collection is definitely on the more minimalistic side, as I had said, with the intricacies of those lighter fabrics, and the embellishments are still there, just not as overloaded again, but they're all still super pretty. Cashmere cardigans are paired with skirts or jumpsuits, and then fur coats are paired with those sporty outfits or the evening outfits. There were some tailored pieces as well that were very good, and they were either like whole suits or the jacket, or it was a pant, maybe some shorts too, like capri type shorts. And then the gowns, which is obviously very true to Elie Saab, were pretty with lace, sequin, flowier fabrics, very standard, right? And then some were on the more simple side, and then there were others that definitely had a little bit more intricacy to it. Interesting detail work of some of the dresses were, some had exposed boning and then fur on the bodices, while there were others that had more lace work around the dress, and then the chest piece and like the top part of the bodice was turtleneck sweaters. I didn't love those. They looked a little strange to me, but it still all ties into the theme. But the boning and fur bodice ones, loved. The color palette is definitely on the more neutral side with blacks, whites, browns, and then there were the metallic golds and silvers, which I guess kind of act as neutral somewhat. And then the color came in yellow, burgundies, and greens, which were good selections. They all worked, and they all worked with the neutrals, especially when they were kind of around the browns. I felt like they sat well with like the browns or like the creams. For me, I liked the mixture of the sporty and the glamorous. It definitely felt like Elie Saab, just a little bit less of the wild and wow and intricacies that we're used to seeing, but it definitely felt like someone could go to Aspen for a trip in the winter and wear some of this stuff during the day and then flip over to one of the dresses for the evening. It all worked. It all sat together in the same origin, and it all worked in the same concept. The color palette was great. The tailoring was good. The fur was good. I thought the sporty jumpsuits were super cute, and they're easily very wearable. Like I had said, you totally see women wearing that stuff in the mountains, in the snow. And I already mentioned the dresses that had the exposed boning and fur was probably my favorite. And I just thought that there was a really good balance between the two aesthetics, that glamorous, extravagant, and the minimal sporty. It all worked, and it all still read as Elie Saab. And realistically, these aren't two concepts that I would generally put together because in my mind, they are very separate, but the way that Elie Saab did it proved me wrong, and it works. I keep saying it works, but it works. It was really pretty, still very elegant, very glamorous, but had a minimal edge to it. And this fall-winter collection is good. It works. And the last collection I want to talk about is Chanel, which obviously this collection is the last one with the creative team running the collection out onto the runway, because Matthew Blazy will be making his debut at the end of the year with Spring Summer, and we're all waiting for that. But to talk about this collection, it is still a form of continuity with the last few collections that the creative team has put out onto the runway by keeping things light. And the Grand Palais had a giant ribbon shaped set to help bring in the collection and the Chanel codes, with the black ribbon throughout the collection in bows being one of the main themes, which is obviously a very iconic Chanel theme, motif, whatever you'd like to call it. And they were literally everywhere. They were tied around the necks of models, they were printed onto the fabrics, they were embroidered in sequin, they were cutouts in the fabric, they were knitted onto them, they were added into the hair. They were literally everywhere. And I thought some of it was done well, and some of it was not. And to that, I would like to preface by saying that my opinion of this collection is relatively undecided. I'm kind of like in the middle of liking it and not liking it. So we'll see if me talking about this helps with the clarity. But we are going to start with one of the main things that the creative team did to help bring more lightness to the tweeds and also give it a little bit more something that's different. They decided to veil some of these tweeds in tulle, which I did not like. For the most part, there were some that were cute, but on the whole, I didn't like it. Not really. But that was an attempt to help bring in more youthfulness and keep it light and keep kind of flowy, and it did what it was supposed to do. It just wasn't super well executed for all of them. And then along with those tweeds, they were also swapped for some corduroys, which I really liked, as well as swapping it for knits instead, which I liked, like jersey knit kind of fabrics, which again, I liked. And then there were of course tweeds in color, some of them solid, some of them with the multicolors. The multicolors were my least favorite. I think the solid color ones worked the best. And then shift dress type shapes, which you could see in some of the tulle veiled tweed, was also a fairly common styling shape throughout the collection. They were in the tweeds, they were in the tulle, they were in the chiffons, they were in some silkier satins, in the jackets and sweaters and leather pieces. The leather pieces were like a really shiny kind of texture, and I'm gonna be honest, some of them kind of looked cheap. Not all of them, but most of them. Some of them I would totally wear, while the others I just didn't like. And then there were also some denim-like moments, whether they looked more like cords or they were actually denim, I'm assuming, or they were matched with some lighter chiffon fabrics. Those were there, and they were good breakups to the rest of the styling choices, the fabrication choices, and the color palettes. The sweaters that were in the collection were not bad. They were definitely just sweaters, and they were good. The green ones, to me, were probably the best one. I liked the color too, and I think the color helped bring those sweaters up, for me at least. And then there was a section of black dresses that had white ribbons printed onto it, and they were kind of like brushed almost. And to me, that was the section. There were only a few of them. It felt very out of place, to me at least, and they were overall kind of weak looking. Like, it wasn't, they were kind of just there, and they weren't giving much, and they could have just not had them, and I don't think there would have been a loss with the collection, quite frankly. And then there were pant looks that I thought were very strong. All the pants looked like they fit well. I liked the tweeds that were in it. It all worked. The pants were just good in general. And something that I really loved about this collection was like this oversized pearl necklace that was, it looked like a bag, because I could have sworn on the biggest pearl there's a line that looks like you can open it. So it might be a bag, but I still liked it regardless of what it may or may not be. It was very cute. Very, very cute. But when you look at the collection as a whole, all 70 something looks, I think, it's definitely not the worst one I've seen. It's not great, but it's also not bad. But the problem is that a lot of the collections that the creative team has had to do in the wake of the new creative director being put into place and then getting rolling with their debut, all of the collections have been not very great, but also not horrible, but also kind of generic, but also just not very memorable, and we all want better, and we just want more. And this is just one of those collections. And I think because we aren't getting a new creative director until the end of the year, they've just had to fill the slots, right? They just had to make sure that they were doing something to add to the collection lineups for each season, which I get, but Chanel is in desperate need of Matthew Blazy to come in with a fresh POV and bring more direction to the collections, because that is what they sorely need. They just need a good, sturdy POV with more direction and a fresh eye, and hopefully that wakes the brand back up and starts moving in a good direction again. And I think what also didn't help with this particular collection, because it doesn't always work, is that there might have been an attempt to emanate a little bit of Karl Lagerfeld with how he used to do his collections, where it was choppy in its sections. So it's like, this section would be this, and then there would be this, and then there would be this, and then there would be this, because that's what the collection felt like. It was very 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, and it didn't really work because it didn't hold the same presence or even just the same designs and storytelling that Karl Lagerfeld did. So, and it just didn't work right. And that is a bit of an unfortunate thing, but that just also adds to the fact that the highly anticipated debut of Matthew Blazy that's coming in September, October, something like that, it is exactly that. Very highly anticipated. And I think I'm gonna stick with the fact that I'm a bit of the with this collection, and just hope that when the next fashion month comes along, we get something very exciting and very good from Chanel. And this is the end of my Fall-Winter 2025 ready-to-wear Paris Fashion Week review. Obviously, I only picked a few. Paris Fashion Week always has tons of brands that I would love to talk about, but for time I picked these 5. And with Paris being complete, obviously fashion month is also done for fall winter, and I think on the whole there were definitely themes and trends that we saw throughout most of it, things that all have continuity to each other, and I definitely loved so many of them. Some of them were in the middle, and I obviously personally didn't love some as well, but that is the norm. That is how we all work. But on the whole, I thought that the collections for the fall winter season were good. They worked, and it was a successful fashion month in my opinion. But with that being said, this is the last piece of content that I will be doing for the fall winter season, and this is the end of the video. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.